Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on this Victory Monday in your nation's capital as the Commanders are moving on for the next round of the playoffs. I guess, Julie Gunlock, I should also point out and acknowledge that the Ravens of Baltimore also won their playoff game. Oh, yeah, those guys.
Yeah.
We are on a collision course for a Ravens versus Redskins Super Bowl.
Boy.
Are you pumped about that?
That's going to be a lot of queso in the region.
I don't think that's going to happen. But either way, it's an exciting morning here in the nation's capital as everyone is enjoying the burgundy and gold in the winner's circle for the first time in 20 years. At 7:35, we'll talk to Trevor Matich about that game, and once again, won in dramatic last-second fashion. 8:05, Dr. Stanley Goldfarb of Do No Harm, and then at 8:35, Joel Pollack of Breitbart News, whose home was spared in the Palisades, but he's got lots of stories about what happened there, and he can answer some questions. He's been very clear-headed about how he's been covering the political fallouts and the various aspects of what's been going on there. So look forward to talk to Joel. Right now, though, we're looking forward, Julie Gunlock, to talk to Joe diGenova. He, of course, the former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, and he is our every Monday at 7 o'clock guest, must-listen radio. People schedule this. They have alarms on their phone.
Yes.
Joe diGenova, good morning, sir. Good to talk with you.
Good morning. They'll always be the Redskins to me.
Yes. Same here. Joe, a couple of things here. First of all, let's tidy up the lawfare against Donald Trump. Jack Smith has now officially resigned. He's completed his final report on the federal cases. We don't know if we're going to actually see them or not, right? After Judge Cannon actually said, why are you writing a report? We dismissed all of this because you were improperly and unconstitutionally appointed in the first place. And secondly, Judge Merchan in the big dog and pony show sentencing ended up actually not sentencing Donald Trump to anything. So is that the end of all of this? Or should there be some repercussions? Should people be punished for even trying to do this? Does a law need to be changed? Or is the remedy, Joe diGenova, that Donald Trump and his team of lawyers and investigators should now do exactly to Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and any other Democrat they don't like, do exactly to them what they did to Trump?
Well, I think, first of all, that the Trump people should not talk about this at all. They should simply ignore all the questions about what you're going to do and whether or not you're going to seek vengeance, which, of course, is, that's all part of governing how you wield the law enforcement power of the United States. I think that what they should do is, now that Jack Smith, in a footnote, has resigned and left town, what an ignominious departure. Not holding a press conference, not talking to anybody, just skulking out of town. I think Jack Smith should be the subject not of an internal investigation by the Justice Department, because those never go anywhere. Michael Horowitz is a paper tiger. He's a joke, the Inspector General. I think he should be replaced, by the way. I don't think there's any room for Michael Horowitz to continue as the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. He should be gone, as should every other Inspector General in government right now. As for what to do, there needs to be a special counsel appointed by the incoming Attorney General to conduct an investigation under 18 U.S.C. 241, which is a conspiracy to deny the rights, constitutional rights of citizens, and have that investigate everybody involved in the process, starting in January of 2017, when Barack Obama authorized a counterintelligence investigation into an incoming president. Whether or not anybody is immune by presidential immunity or can be prosecuted is irrelevant. There needs to be a full-scale grand jury investigation, coupled with a revocation of every security clearance of every major figure in the intelligence community. The 51 who signed the letter, Christopher Wray, on his way out, should never get a security clearance again. There's lots to do, and what they should do is not talk about it, just do it.
Yeah, I do like that move. Anytime they're asked, they should just say, we're going to follow the law, and if there's a crime, we'll follow, we'll enforce the law, and just leave it at that. I do want to get you to Chris Wray's exit interview there with Scott Pelley in just a moment, Joe, but just to quickly follow up on that, this is always Republicans and conservatives, we always have to deal with this kind of lawfare, the criminal investigation. This is not new. This has been going on for a couple of decades, or at least since Obama really put the Justice Department with Eric Holder on steroids. And the instinct is, well, when we're in charge, we're the better angels. We're not going to do to you what you did to us, and we end up, no one learns a lesson. It seems like the only way this ends is if Biden and the Democrats have to actually face exactly what Donald Trump had faced. But they're always afraid that the media will say this, the media will say that. Well, of course they will. They always do. Ignore it and move on. It seems to me that's the only way this finally ends, if it ends up being like the Cold War.
Well, the Democrats only understand mutually assured destruction. They continue to believe, even now, after all of this, that they actually won the election, that this is all just a big misunderstanding, but that they control the media, they control the major media outlets, and their narrative will always win out. That obviously didn't happen in the last election. Their narrative did not win out. But the answer to them is a punch in the nose. That's the only thing they understand. And you do that quietly by not talking about it, by simply appointing a special counsel, giving that person a very broad writ to investigate all of the things starting in January of 2017. You reopen the Durham investigation. You reopen the FISA warrants investigation. And remember, every one of these people with Comey, Brennan, Clapper have all made public statements about all of this during the last few years. And every time they made a public statement, that was an overt act, restarting the statute of limitations on a conspiracy to deny Donald Trump his civil rights.
Yeah.
If the Justice Department does not appoint a special counsel to investigate what has happened to Donald Trump over the last number of years, 7, 8 years, the department is useless. Whoever the Attorney General ends up being must do this. This is not a decision that has to be thought about. This has to be done to save the Department of Justice for itself. And by the way, all these public servants who now would say 50% of the civil servants, according to a recent poll, intend to resist the President of the United States.
Ugh.
Put that poll in your pocket, put it in a litigation file in the Justice Department, in the Civil Division, and start firing people when you get in. Reorganize. You don't have to fire them. You can just simply reorganize them into places where they have nothing to do, but they have to come to the office every day. They have to face the office every day, whether it's an empty building, a desk with no phone, they have to come in.
Joe diGenova is our guest. And, Joe, there's a lot of talk about pardons here. The press secretary is suggesting there will be some pardons. But before we get to her, here's J.D. Vance answering a question about January 6 pardons.
President Trump says there's a process. Where is the line drawn on who will and wouldn't be considered for a pardon?
I think it's very simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there, but we're very much committed to seeing the equal administration of law. And there are.
Joe, this seems like it could get pretty complicated. Can they pardon people who were nonviolent, like standing on the lawn, and then maybe commute the sentences of those who were already convicted?
Well, they can do anything they want. The president's pardon clemency power is unlimited and vast. They're going to do all of that. I assume what they're going to do immediately upon arrival is commute the sentences of everyone who's in prison right now. Just commute the sentences. That's not a pardon. That's graciousness on the part of the new executive. And that can include people who committed acts of violence. And I support that. I support commutations and pardons for every single person on January 6th. I think it's really important because what happened on January 6th was ugly. It was a riot, and it should have been dealt with as such. It was not dealt with as such. It was dealt with in a way that actually besmirched federal law enforcement. And I don't care what Christopher Wray says or Merrick Garland about all the principles they were defending. They were not defending principles. This was a vendetta against Donald Trump. It never had anything to do with enforcing the law. And if they want to do something, reopen the grand jury on Lieutenant Byrd, who killed Ashley Babbitt. That's another case that needs to be reopened. There's no double jeopardy. He was never in front of a jury. He needs to see a jury inside the District of Columbia. He shot and killed Ashley Babbitt in an unjustified use of deadly force.
We'll continue with Joe diGenova here. He mentioned Christopher Wray, who gave a 60 Minutes interview yesterday. We're going to talk about that and continued pardons coming from the Biden team, maybe even preemptive pardons. We'll get to all of that in a moment. First, though, at 7:15, WMAL.
So we have been saying that the president will have more to say, more to announce on pardons and commutations. So that is, we have 10 days to go. So certainly that will be very soon that we'll make those announcements. I'm not going to get into the scope. I'm not going to get ahead of the president, but we will be making some more additional announcements on pardons and commutations.
Well, he's already commuted every person on death row except for 3 politically incorrect people that you can't give the commutations. I don't know if there's anybody left there. And then pardons as well. What do you expect Joe Biden to do here? Again, you can't reverse any of this. As Joe diGenova just said, these powers are absolute. But this whole string of preemptive pardons are really something. You saw Michael Cohen begging for one, like Hunter Biden got over the weekend. What do you expect here, Joe? What do you think Joe will do? We know Joe Biden has no shame.
Well, first of all, we don't know who's making these decisions. Joe Biden is non-compos menace. Make no doubt about it. He's not functioning as the president of the United States. This is a disgrace. And the Democrats who believe in good government think this is just fine. Everybody who casts a vote should remember just how wonderful the Democrats are about governing. They think it's okay to put a mental incompetent in office as the president with the nuclear codes for 4 years and just be happy as clams about that. Whether it's Biden or not, I expect them to do preemptive pardons of Brennan, Clapper, Fauci at a minimum. After that, the numbers are strange and unusual because they would have to be vast. You'd have to pardon the 51 people who signed the letter lying about the Hunter laptop. You'd have to pardon Mike Morrell, the former acting CIA director who started the letter along with Tony Blinken. You'd probably have to pardon Blinken because remember, all of these people who signed that letter, people forget this. When you have a conspiracy case, the conspiracy can be vast. And those who sought to undermine the rights of Donald Trump were not necessarily people who knew everybody else in the prospect or who understood the ultimate goal. They committed an overt act. For example, when Blinken calls Morrell and gets him to start the letter signed by the 51, that is an overt act in a conspiracy against Donald Trump. Everyone who signed that letter is part of that conspiracy. And when Mike Morrell went up on Capitol Hill and testified about how that letter was generated, that testimony restarted the statute of limitations all over again. So this is an endless, if you do it right, if you follow the law, which is something the Democrats never do, this will end up where it should be, in front of the federal grand jury, preferably in the Southern District of Florida.
Christopher Wray, Scott Pelley exit interview. It's amazing. Christopher Wray had all these revelations about how dastardly China is, what an existential threat China is. That China's for the last 8 years or 6 years, he's been FBI director. He hasn't said any of this under sworn testimony in Congress, but he tells Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes. He says how dangerous everything is. If he's such a good FBI director, why are things so dangerous?
If only there was an agency that
that actually looked into all
that.
of these things, and if only that agency looked at China instead of looking at people going to Latin Mass. Your overall impression of Christopher Wray last night as he continued to claim that the FBI is non-political and just calls balls and strikes?
Well, Christopher Wray will go down in history as the single worst FBI director. Now, he said that the raid on Mar-a-Lago was justified. That is nonsense. That is utter nonsense. And for him to mouth that is nothing more than a request by him to be on boards of directors that still have DEI as part of their thematic scheme for running a corporation. This guy, that was an interview, not with 60 Minutes, but with various corporations around the country looking for an idiot to put on their board. That's why he must be denied his security clearance right now. I mean, he's gone effectively January, whatever the hell it is, but he should be denied his security clearance. By the way, that's going to be a test for me of John Ratcliffe, who's the new CIA director, and whoever ends up being the director of national intelligence. Those security clearances must be revoked. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And if they do not do that, if the Trump administration does not do that, then all of this effort on the president's behalf will have been for naught.
Joe diGenova, the next time we speak, we will be just hours away from the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th president. That means will be in the final hours of the Biden presidency. My guess is that weekend, next weekend, this weekend coming up, will be full of lots of interesting pardons and commutations, and I can't wait to talk to you about it then. Thanks, Joe.
You bet.
By the way, as we talk about this Scott Pelley interview and Christopher Wray, obviously the focus should be Christopher Wray. You know me, though. I can't take my eyes off the media.
I know.
Can we just all agree that Scott Pelley is the single stupidest person working in D.C. media, political media today? And especially, mostly because he's got this harumphy, right? So everything comes out like he's just so smart and he's got my professor.
Perfect.
And he's a freaking moron.
Yeah.
Listen to this question.
If it's such a dangerous time, why resign?
Why? Because Kash Patel's already been selected as his replacement. What do you mean? I gotta tell you, Christopher Wray, this seems real. Why are you quitting then?
I mean, you've been ignoring the problem for how many years?
If it's
Why
such
quit?
a dangerous time, why resign?
Why are you resigning? And Christopher Wray's got to lean in and say, Scott, do you read the news?
Yeah, exactly.
Trump says he's firing me. I've decided to resign before he fires me. They've literally already picked the person they're replacing me with.
Scott Pelley has essentially established the fact that Wray has ignored this problem for how many years?
But
and
it's
he's
so
like, why resign?
We need you to do something.
We need you to ignore it for another 4 years.
If it's such a dangerous time, why resign?
Literally the stupidest person. Stupid. And I don't name call. I'm not a name caller.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37 here, this Victory Monday in your nation's capital. Yeah, the Ravens won too, so I guess that counts, Julie, but who cares? Coming up at 8:05, Dr. Stanley Goldfarb of Do No Harm, 8:35, Joe Pollack of Breitbart. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
And let's get right to it, because your Washington Commanders in signature style now in the Quinn Daniels era pulled out a victory as the clock wound down to 0. And boy, it's one thing Trevor managed to win a game with a field goal on the road in the playoffs, but then you doink it in off the upright. I can't take much more of this, Trevor.
Yeah, you're right about that. With time expiring, they kicked a relatively short field goal, but as with this season with Washington, it couldn't be easy. They had to have drama. So the ball left the kicker's toes, Zane Gonzalez, and it went towards the right upright, and it looked like he was going to miss it, and the game was going to overtime. But then it hit the upright, and when it did that, it was hard to tell on TV the perspective whether it would bounce in or out. Well, it turned out it bounced in because it hit the inside of the upright for a victory. And of the last 6 games that Washington played, including that playoff game, 5 of them, including this playoff game, ended on the last play and a victory for Washington. Just drama in the best possible way.
I'll say, absolutely crazy. I'd like to think that was Sean Taylor was up there just sort of nudging it across right after the doink. Just to make the burgundy and gold faithful happy again. It's been 20 years now. And what else do you take away from the game? I mean, this is the first time these players, some of them have been in the playoffs before, but this is the first time wearing that uniform, they've gotten a victory. And by the way, so happy for Terry McLaurin, who has just been such a dynamic workhorse. And boy, all I heard about all night long was Mike Evans this. And yes, Mike Evans is great, but boy, oh boy, did Terry McLaurin rise to the occasion last night.
Yeah, McLaurin was absolutely fantastic. I mean, early in the game, he caught about a 35-yard pass down the left sideline with incredibly tight coverage. The ball was thrown high in the air, and McLaurin was able to track it, and it came down literally straight out of the sky.
Like Willie
with the defender
Mays.
right on his back.
It was over his shoulder in a basket catch. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, and then he caught a touchdown, a short touchdown later in the game that proved pivotal, where the pocket was collapsing on Jaden Daniels. And Daniels stayed in the pocket. He knew he had just enough time for McLaurin to go into the end zone and cut to his right, and he delivered the ball just before he got hit. And McLaurin finished that one too. I mean, overall, McLaurin had had 89 receiving yards in this game, and he had help from some other receivers who had good games. But I'm so happy for McLaurin just because this is the first time in his career with Washington that he's had a quarterback that could actually get him the ball.
Yeah, and it was the clutch plays. It's like when you needed it, you knew it was going to be Scary Terry. Also, something that's been overlooked here, or at least I haven't seen a whole lot of mention of it, not only did Jaden Daniels win this game without any turnovers, but no punts. When was the last time that's happened, that a team has won a playoff game without a turnover or a punt? That's amazing, and that's really a testament to what this offense is capable of right now.
Yeah, the thing about the offense is that they did make some big plays down the field, but mostly they were unstoppable on the short plays. And so Tampa Bay couldn't get them off the field. I mean, their longest drive was 17 plays, 92 yards. It started with 3 minutes to go in the first quarter and didn't end until halfway through the second quarter. And, they had most of their drives, 5 of the 7 drives were 10 plays or more. And that was a huge factor in this game. It wasn't that they kept on hitting those long plays like they did to Terry McLaurin in the first quarter that we just talked about. It's that they kept hitting the little plays that got them first downs, and they stayed on the field. And you've really got to credit the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, for making the right plays at the right time to keep them on schedule, and then to get those clutch first downs, converting the third downs.
So that time of possession and ball control, not only obviously does it make the opposing team's defense get worn down and tired, and it puts you in a position to be able to put some points on the board, it also keeps the offense off the field. Now with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, that's one thing, but boy, that's got to be part of the strategy looking next week, because the Lions have been scoring so many points against anybody. They've dominated offensively. So do you expect the Commanders to have the same strategy here, to just keep Jared Goff and Jamar Gibbs and the Lions sitting on the sidelines as much as possible?
It has to be. The Lions had the top scoring offense in the NFL this year, and they have been on fire. And you've got to expect to have to keep up in a track meet. Here's the thing, though. The Lions defense has a lot of injuries. Yep. They have been really banged up. And in their last 5 games, the Lions gave up over 30 points 3 of the 5 games. And so Washington, with the way Jaden Daniels is playing, has a good chance to keep up in that track meet, not because their offense is necessarily as talented overall as the Lions, but because the Lions' defense, if it doesn't get healthy with the bye week that they earned by being the number 1 seed in the NFC, then this could be a super exciting game. Now, having said that, the Lions are favored by 8.5 points right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've got to look at those injuries on the Lions' defense.
Well, and strangely, the Lions, full disclosure, that's my childhood team, so I've been following them as much as I followed the Commanders this year. All of their losses this year, or both of their losses, were at home. They were unstoppable on the road, but everyone thinks, they got the home field advantage, and Ford Field is a remarkable place for a game. But those are the 2 Lions losses were actually at Ford Field. So this is going to be quite a game, I think, Trevor. Quite a game.
I think it will be. And the thing is, the fan bases of both of these teams have everything in common.
Yes,
well, almost everything. The Detroit's never won the Super Bowl. Matter of fact, they've never appeared in the Super Bowl.
Never been to a Super Bowl. Nope, never been. In fact, the last chance they had at an NFC Championship game with Barry Sanders, they lost at RFK to the Redskins.
But see, that's the thing. The diehard fans of the Lions have those old Barry Sanders jerseys, and they've been just waiting year after year after year, hoping that the Lions would break through, and they never have. Whereas Washington fans, and this is what they have in common, since that last Super Bowl in the 90s, Washington has been awful. And they've had their Darryl Green jerseys on year after year after year, desperate for. And all of a sudden, those 2 desperate fan bases, one team's going to lose here, but you've got to feel good in advance for the fan base that wins, because it's been a long time coming.
Agreed. And I count myself as a fan base for both teams. I'm just sorry that the NFC bracket has not lined up in such a way that this is the championship game. But either way, it'll be a great one. It's the best time of the year, Trevor. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'm glad we never even had to mention the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
gracious.
Yeah, we'll talk about them next week when they win the national championship.
That's right.
It's 7:44. All right, focusing back to Los Angeles here in the political fallout. They often say personnel is policy, right? Why did this go wrong? Well, look at the people who are in charge. And the woman who has been put in place as the head of the Department of Water and Power, which, by the way, again, just because I've used to live in Southern California, I know this, LADWP, go ahead and do a browser search on this mess of a government agency. Nothing but corruption for like decades. It's just full of corruption.
Yeah.
The Department of Water and Power. Of course, the water chief is in charge of many of the policies that were put in place to make sure that the reservoirs were full of water, for instance, they were not. Well, here she was giving an interview just a few months before this tragedy.
You call it powered by equity, and I know that it's been really important for the DWP to put an equity lens on everything.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the number one thing that attracted me to this role. Coming from the communities that I come, seeing what I've seen through my career in utilities and through the military. I've been in the Coast Guard 19 and a half years now, so I got 6 more months to qualify for my 20 years, which was my original goal.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank
you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
When people talk about their military service in terms of, I've almost qualified for full pension, it's like, okay, we know that's a thing, but when you say it out loud, it sounds like you're just a mercenary looking for a big government pension. Anyway, what attracted me most to the role was social equity.
Yeah.
It's important that what we do is an equity lens and social justice, righting the wrongs for the water agency, for water.
Yeah, and I also love that this is a job that paid $750,000 a year. It's like the young 23-year-old marrying the decrepit old billionaire. What attracted you? You know, It's like, oh yeah, she says it's the equity. Sure, it's not the almost $1 million payout.
Her name is Janice Quinones, and equity and social justice was the top thing that attracted her to being in charge of the water policy in Los Angeles. Clearly, that makes sense because making sure that firefighters have water during a fire was really low on the list of priorities for her.
That's right.
And Los Angeles is now very happy with all of the equitable distribution of tragedy.